importance of movement, solitons, and coherent light in the development of mental processes. Adam Adamski. Movement and its impact on mental processes. Movement is a fundamental attribute of life, a factor shaping the development of somatic mental and motor development and human health. Physical activity is present from the moment human beings are conceived and remains with them throughout their lives. Movement is given to a human being from their birth and is associated with the circulatory, respiratory, and neuromuscular systems as well as with motility of the whole living system. The muscular system movement contributes to muscle growth, increases the number of employed fibers, changes the chemical composition of muscle fibers, followed by changes in the excitability of muscular nervous, circulatory, increases the number of red blood cells and hemoglobin, increases the capacity of oxygen in blood, improves glucose management in blood, increases the count of white blood cell, creates an economical work of the heart, and also regulates physiological functions of the body. Movement stimulates and activates mental processes such as learning, thinking, imagining, feeling, and consciousness. It determines our reasoning and us. It integrates and anchors in our neural networks new information and practical experience. Movement is the basis for our ability to see, to situate ourselves in space, to study the shape and form of our environment, as well as for interactions with humans. Lack of exercise causes children to suffer from inhibition in the development of patterns necessary to develop inner speech as well as cause and effect thinking. Movement has an innate control mechanism and is slightly susceptible to modification by learning. Its apparent plasticity consists of the performance of a multitude of movements in contact with the environment. Movement retains its symmetry, and this symmetry determines the movement of the lower and upper limb, upper facial expressions, or the whole body. Disturbance of this symmetry is evident in mental dysfunctions. This is especially noticeable in children with autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The interplay of learning movements along with the internal representation is essential when learning a variety of shapes of objects and recognizing space. Lorenz studied the behavior of geese and found that geese hatchlings follow the first moving object that appeared within their sight. Lorenz concluded that the birds he studied were born with a ready pattern to follow a moving subject. Lorenz called this phenomenon imprinting. A property is imprinted in the empty space that contains a pattern to follow. For Sedlak, this pattern is bioplasma. While Jung regards archetypes as such patterns, Jungian archetypes affect human behavior and personality development. Nature provides a properly developing human body with the following mechanisms: the mechanism of imitation, motor symmetry, and the inborn mechanism of speech. If there is no imitation mechanism, if symmetry of movement is disturbed or the speech mechanism is impaired, pathological psychological structures will develop. If children did not have an innate knowledge of speech, it would take many years for speech to develop in children. Piaget believes that the whole biological system must be active to take the information from the environment, to choose from this information what is important to integrate it with existing standards, and at the same time to express it as movement. By movement, it is possible to express emotions that are too difficult or too overwhelming to be expressed by words. Unexpressed emotions, not shown feelings, do not disappear, but they build up and often find their place in our internal organs, muscles, and tissues. Movement activates not only the body, but also experiences located in it. Movement affects the formation of students' emotional sphere, develops their interest in movement and activity as a component of general education, at the same time creates a basis for creating high aptitude for learning and effort, and helps in the realization of human social functions. The behavior of patients with autism, depression, mental illness, dyslexia, anorexia, bulimia, ADHD, etc. indicates the disintegration of the movement, the lack of a mechanism of imitation, or its limitation. These people are dysfunctional. They appear to have messages with double meanings, inappropriate movements, shortness of breath, dividing in the body, lack of visual motor coordination, etc. In spontaneous movement, a patient who is driven by internal impulses, emotions, associations can explore movement patterns that form a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Movement is symbolic and helps to express what is unconscious and difficult to verbalize. The inclusion of the body in the process of therapy allows the realization of repressed emotions and unconscious contents. Gestures, movements, dance improvisations are designed to bring children and people together. Art provides them with an opportunity to establish an emotional bond. In this context, what merits special attention is theatrical performances, which combine such elements of art as literature, acting, theater set design, music, and dance. Children need to engage in theatrical plays because it is in the theater that children can create their own world of shapes, sounds, words, events, issues, experiences, emotions, individual and collective sensations. Moreover, the theater plays an important part in children's education. Participation in performances makes children more responsive to people's dramatic experiences, teaches them social skills and competencies, creative and dynamic thinking, teamwork, discipline, and responsibility. 2. Managing information in a biocomputer-like manner in the human biological system. The essence of a biological system is piezoelectricity, pyroelectricity, and semiconductivity. Piezoelectric and pyroelectricity can convert mechanical energy into electricity and vice versa. Semiconductors convert electromagnetic energy into electricity. Thus, a semiconductor communicates using electric and magnetic fields, while a piezoelectric uses electric fields and acoustic waves. The body as a piezoelectric semiconductor system is sensitive to all kinds of information fields: magnetic, electrical, thermal, mechanical, gravitational soliton fields, spin and bioplasmas that act on the psychosomatic structure of man and at the same time determine the development, integration, and destabilize his personality. Movement is associated with piezoelectricity. In biology, the piezoelectric effect is considered to play a significant role in the functioning of many biological tissues. Biological structures containing protein and nucleic acids exhibit piezoelectric properties. Every living organism acquires these properties upon coming into being. Piezoelectric material has the ability to run bioelectronics processes that are essential to the functioning of the body. Piezoelectric responds to mechanical, acoustic, electric, and gravitational energy. If these types of energy do not influence biological tissues, the organisms concerned undergo pathological changes. The biochemical model explains the intricate mechanisms of mental life. It still cannot explain what the transition is from inanimate to animate matter. Where is the threshold and what is its essence, the role played by the biochemical processes and the consistency of the soma of consciousness and its impact on the soma and vice versa? A similar problem is with the other mental processes. Their nature is not within the biochemical model of life, and it is inexplicable based on biochemical interactions. Again, it is much easier to describe it in the light of quantum processes, including the physics of wave. In modern science, existing biosystems have been analyzed at the level of corpuscular structures, with energy and information structures being ignored. The focus will move in the direction of the cognitive structures of energy's information. The body can be recognized as a quantum generator of information: electromagnetic, solitonic, sound, spin, and bioplasma. The term information has many meanings. It is generally understood as something that carries a message. Information is also referred to as the ability to organize a system or maintain an organized state. Programs and information data in the computer are stored in flash memory. Semiconductor memories are called digital integrated circuits designed to store large amounts of information in binary form. The memory capacity is given in bits or bytes. Thus, the amount of information that can be stored on a single memory integrated circuit is in the range of from kilobytes to tens of megabytes. A biological computer operates using algorithms, and the role of the programmer is assumed by bioplasma, which does the programming in a heuristic manner. Enzymes, because of the relevant conformational changes, can function as molecular switches. Currently, analogies are drawn with computers. For example, neurons are treated as microprocessors and molecular quantum computers, while enzymes are thought of as nanoprocessors. They deal with the processing of information in microtubules, considering them and nanocomputers biomolecular machines. The interior of microtubules can function as an electromagnetic waveguide, and laser-like, long-range quantum coherent phenomena occurring there allow for a new look at the issue of the brain and consciousness. The brain can thus be considered as a biological photon computer, which contains neural quantum optical networks. Between the layers of the cerebral cortex, transfer of information may be taking place via electromagnetic waves. According to Hameroff, synapses and neurons have a complex structure and should be considered as biocomputers. They are distinguished in that they have a high capacity for parallel computing in microfilaments, microtubules, together with all the cytoskeletons. Performance of cells should be considered in the context of a dynamic, but not static. The cytoskeleton is capable of collective processing of information in a cell area at the molecular level and performs the function of a computer cluster. To understand the functioning of the cytoskeleton, numerous clusters, several models have been constructed, but they failed to meet the expectations. Studies show that artificial neural networks are not able to accurately reproduce the functions that occur in the brain. Namely, they are not able to accurately determine the hierarchy dynamically changing information, which is something the brain has no problem performing. Hameroff believes that microfilaments, microtubules, along the entire cytoskeleton incorporate the modules that must assess the inherent nature of hierarchical information. Multi-level neural network in the brain combines modules and has a comprehensive system to recognize a hierarchy of information and the highest global level of information combined with an act of consciousness. Cytoskeletons in a cell can dynamically change the intracellular organization by changing their network connections and information, but also to connect with neighboring cells. They also can reconfigure. The main attribute of the cytoskeleton is its flexibility in dividing its resources in a collective manner, which is important for information resolution and processing. Cytoskeletal processing of signals involves the cytoskeletal filamentous structure assembling information into data series and strings in a manner that is like the formulation of a phonetic language. Microtubule functions as channels that carry information strings and data strings. At the same time, protect the information against interference and crosstalk. According to Hameroff and Penrose, microtubules and actin cytoskeleton function as microprocessors and must be considered as biocomputer phones. A similar point of view is held by Richard Tadeuszewicz, who believes that at the single-cell level extraordinarily complex regulatory, cybernetic, and information processes take place. The elements involved in this process are single molecules. The information carrier is a structural protein, acids DNA, RNA, melanin. Tadeuszewicz says that in medicine man is usually looked through the prism of the 19th century biochemistry. The body is treated as an object in which chemical processes take place and information processes occurring there are ignored. Protein biocomputer cell membrane is made of protein lipid structure. Protein is piezoelectric. In protein there are unpaired electrons which form free radicals such as superoxide radicals, nitric oxide, and hydroxide. Free radicals can activate spins, electrons, photon, other elementary and atomic particles. Activating spins to spin to the right or to the left involves the generation of a spin box which can be used for binary recording information, for example, movement of spin to the left 1 and to the right 0. In biological membranes, protein biocomputers form a bio-internet network. They are powered by the electric field created during polarization of a piezo and pyroelectric crystal. In such biocomputers, the role of an information carrier would be performed by an acoustic wave created during piezoelectric electrostriction and a soliton wave emanating from the spinning motion of spins produced by free radicals. DNA biocomputer DNA consists of a double helix and has sugar, phosphate, and rules, purine, adenine, guanine, and pyrimidine cytosine, and thymine. The information in DNA is stored in a four-letter language. Albert Popp showed that DNA laser emits light in the range of 200 nanometers to 800 nanometers. DNA is bioelectric power resulting from piezoelectricity and creates a forms a bio-internet network in which the information carrier is laser light waves and sound. DNA computers have many properties that are more attractive than those of electronic computers. They operate on the principle of DNA-based sequence, which allows them to pack information very densely. In 1 cubic centimeter of DNA, one can store as much information as can be stored in the 1 trillion CD-ROMs. Biocomputers provide an extremely high degree of parallel processing. They are very energy efficient. With 1 J of energy, such computers can carry out 2 by 10^19 operations of joining DNA molecules. Today's supercomputers are much slower, as 1 joule allows them to run at least 109 operations. Melanin biocomputer melanocytic cells located in the skin, hair follicles, in the sense of sight, ear, nerves, substance nigra, and meninges are responsible for the synthesis of melanin, and melanin biocomputers maintain the structure. The process of synthesis of melanin is dependent on the light, temperature, and electric field, again neuromelanin, serotonin, and dopamine. Melanin can convert light into a wave acoustic phonon or photon and vice versa, phonon and a photon. Melanin directs light and can accelerate its movement or delay. Melanin can also convert light into solitons and information field or infins, which are conditioned by the movement of the spin. Spin densities produce energy and information fields as an energon infon, together with solitons, because melanin, as a free radical, is capable of activating spins, electron and photon ones, other elementary particles, and atomic particles. This ongoing transformation of elementary particles photons into phonons and vice versa, but also photons into infins, has become the basis for binary and qubit information recording. Following the reasoning of T. Stonier and who believed that the world is filled with quantum information carriers called infins, we find that an infon is a photon with infinite wavelength. An infon photon moves at the speed of light, and so do not have a momentum and mass rest. Infon is therefore energy, and therefore if any speed other than the speed of light, the quantum of energy is converted into quanta of information, or an infon. Stonier's hypothesis states that photons are not fundamental particles but consist of 2 components, energy and information. The electromagnetic wave is composed of not 1, but 2 sets of oscillation, an oscillating electric field occurring alternately with the oscillating magnetic field, and a regular variation of information and energy. Scientists are also considering the question of the existence of infins moving at a speed exceeding the speed of light, guided by analogy in relation to the hypothesis of tachyons. Biocomputers are designed to process and organize perceptual images and transfer them onto bioplasma. In bioplasma, a perceptual image is imprinted on bioplasma content and is evaluated and compared by it with its own master pattern. In Jung's theory, this role is performed by archetypes. Jung corrects archetypes, assigning to them a pattern of behavior or a way of thinking and emotional responses, and creates a unique specificity of the organism with his energy and information characteristics, creating its personality structure. Bioplasma responds by recording information in solitons which fill the human psyche. Stimulation of this master pattern results in a particular skill being brought out, e.g. walking, talking, jumping, thinking, representing the world. In adolescence, there are new mental functions, such as reflective consciousness, abstract reasoning, higher feelings. In old age, bioplasma gradually disappears and behavioral patterns are lost. A perceptual and soliton image obtained by the brain from the universe allows bioplasma to evaluate it and compare it with its own pattern, assigning to it a way of behavior, thinking, and emotional response. Information entered by bioplasma in solitons determines an individual's mental state and personality. The human biological system can not only adopt the solitons of the cosmos, but it can itself produce them with free radicals, spin fields, and Bose-Einstein condensate, and bioplasma. Solitons generated from the human body are transferred to the cosmos, but also to the brains of different people in the form of messages or directives. In psychology, this phenomenon is known and referred to as telepathy. It is mentioned in myths and occurs in clairvoyance and precognition. Infon and solution information images are used in conscious, unconscious, and subconscious states, and dreams and altered states of consciousness. In terms of cybernetics, altered states of consciousness are states of densified information. Bioplasma creates a unique personality with complete energy and information characteristics. It determines age, state of health, disease, the way world is perceived, and the way an individual behaves. Bioplasma's role is also to integrate, store, and manage energy information processes in the human biological system. According to Sedlak, bioplasma knows what is in it and is being done around it. It tells the whole and its parts about the energy situation. Bioplasma creates a state of matter, which is unity in diversity. It is the center of life and the material substrate of consciousness. 3. The role of solitons and coherent light in the creation of human psychological structures. The human biological system is filled with bioplasma and is complete with electron electrostasis. The human skin is exposed to mechanical stimuli which trigger piezoelectric polarization in biological structures. Polarization brings with it electric fields from which electrostasis originates. Electrostasis creates an electric protective coat for the body and is responsible for the internal homeostasis of the biological system. It is sensitive to changes in the biological field that cause electrostasis to vibrate. Vibrating electrostasis triggers phonons which condition the cyclicality of quantum interactions, control the process of life, because they link optical, electrical, magnetic, mechanical phenomena with biological mass. Phonons combine all quantum processes with movement of mass, while photons constitute an information center in cell transmission activity. Electrostasis creates an electric protective coat for the body and is responsible for the internal homeostasis of the internal biological system. It is sensitive to changes in the biological field that causes electrostatics to vibrate. Vibrating electrostasis triggers phonons which are thought to condition the cyclicality of quantum interactions, control the process of life because they link optical, electrical, magnetic, mechanical phenomena with biological mass. Phonons combine all quantum processes with mass movement, while photons constitute an information center in cell transmission activity. Figure 1 shows electrostasis around the human body. Electrostatics and bioplasma integrate with the body and provide for it a selective flow of information from the environment in which it lives. Melanin has a very large impact on the development and density of electrostasis. During the synthesis of melanin, there is an increase in the emission of electrons and solitons, and at the same time melanin responds selectively to phonons. Melanin synthesis is carried out under the influence of light and thermal energy. In autumn and winter, when the night is longer than day, when the day is gloomy and there is lack of sunshine, melanin flows from the human body, and melatonin replaces melanin, changing duration of life. Melanin deficiency contributes to the formation of depression. Melatonin biosynthesis is inhibited by light, electric, and magnetic field. An increase in melatonin in a biological system reduces electrostasis density and emission of solitons and phonons. This condition reduces vibration electrostasis, which affects the emotional states of man. The volume and density of electrostasis affects human mental states. Light, water, and sound solitons retain time-spatial or geometric and dynamic properties, are included in local processes, whereas spin solitons are included in nonlinear quantum processes and function as carriers of information fields that are responsible for human psychological states. Humans' mental life depends on coherence and decoherence between solitons and laser light reduced by the human biological system. For the human psyche to be constantly and mutually consistent, this psyche needs to take care of coherence, since after the collapse of the structure of this connection, identity and personality disappear, which is a symptom of schizophrenia. Solitons can permeate the entire universe. Without fading, they have been there from the beginning of the emergence of life until the present moment. Space is densely filled with a network of solitons, carrying content and meaning. Information fields may impact on energy systems with almost no loss of energy, inducing large changes in a biological system. The information fields have influence on the structures of thought. Their variety of densities is infinite. The brain can generate and receive information fields. In the first years of the 21st century, biologists have discovered very interesting nonlinear optical phenomena occurring in collagen, acting based on the processes of solitons. It was concluded from these studies that the soliton induction of collagen can act as an optical fiber, causing other nonlinear effects. Salguirio et al. Reported the mechanism of soliton wave generation and its impact on the waveguide. According to these researchers, the waveguide mechanism acting in the fibers of collagen may be responsible for ultrafast communication transfer in the body. Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose in 1924 was the first to predict that in certain special circumstances a lot of particles can arrange themselves uniformly, positioning spin axes upwards. This synchronization of spins of many particles called bosons, Bose particles at the time, allows several unusual phenomena to occur, such as excess liquidity, superconductivity, and emission of polarized light. Bose-Einstein condensation is just an example of quantum coherence. As it is synchronization of many particles that is being referred to here, we call this phenomenon macroscopic quantum coherence. Dana Zohar in his book The Quantum Self claims that particles in Bose-Einstein condensation not only act uniformly but also produce a certain whole, and compares them to the voices of the members of a choir, which form the whole composition of singing. Zohar considers the idea that if you stimulate Bose-Einstein condensation of light, then bosons emit polarized light. There are natural cosmic lasers called masers which generate coherent light. Reflected light is coherent laser light. In the production of light in the cell, melanin and neuromelanin, which are elements of each nerve cell, play an important role. Melanin can act as a transmitter of phonons and photons in the reverse process. Solitons are generated in nonlinear optical centers and Bose-Einstein condensates. Strong waves laser, the degree of nonlinearity and high concentration of atoms in a Bose-Einstein condensate influenced the formation of multidimensional solitons. Currently, the greatest degree of nonlinearity is achieved by organic substances in which electrons appear likely to travel long distances. Dimensional solitons owe their existence and permanence to a balance of two forces. Dispersion seeks to cause expansion, while nonlinearity seeks to compress solitons. Such a soliton can be obtained, directing the laser beam at appropriately selected half of condensate. In accordance with the concept of Fritz Albert Popp, the function of DNA is based on the laser system exoplex excimer. DNA collects and emits photons consistently as laser light. Technically speaking, coherent states of light come from DNA, as a product of the interaction between photons and phonons in DNA. DNA uses different frequencies of electromagnetic waves and is source of information for the cell. In a healthy body state, photon emission is more consistent than the patient. As for cancer, the author of this paper thinks that spin and soliton waves provide a picture that is different than what electromagnetic waves do when received by the eye. Existing science only accepts the operation of electromagnetic waves. It can be concluded that what we have here is a second medium that creates a structure of the image of the world and is responsible for the development of human personality. Summary and conclusion. When focusing on body and expressive language of movement, we are ready to start and deepen awareness of feelings, posture, gestures, emotions, and associated with them thoughts and meaning. The body contains the history of our life because movement is our primary language. Body movement runs deep feelings and memories. The way we move reveals our blockade and recurring patterns that gives information not only about traffic but also about the mental, emotional processes. Movement reflects one's personality. Electrostasis not only protects the human biological system with an electron jacket that is necessary for the functioning and adaptation of biological and psychological, but also it is a link between the bios and the psyche, both in the conscious and unconscious. Bioplasma with electrostatics connects consciousness with the mind, intellect with intuition, including on the one hand instinct organization and on the other, realm of archetypes. They are the source of the creation of the self, which runs between the inner and outer world. Biocomputer-like management of the organism and bioplasma concept of consciousness shed new light on the field of consciousness studies as well as reveal new ways of clarifying the interaction of the intracellular and intercellular, builds the basis for the creation of new models and the description of perception and consciousness. Moreover, it extends the boundary and defines a new field where nonlinear relationships must be considered, which are currently restricted by the local quantum processes. This will also facilitate the connection of virtual systems and robots with the human biological system, along with mutual interaction. Quantum psychology explains the nature of mental processes in the light of quantum processes, describes the organization of a system cybernetics informative way, explains human behavior in relationships on a quantum field, assigns a significant role to nonlinear processes of consciousness and unconsciousness, recognizes that the human psyche is managed by biocomputers and an internet spaceship. It defines consciousness as the emission of coherent light interacting with solitons and bioplasma. It is postulated that the human biological system is made in the transformation of the photon and phonon and vice versa and photon to the soliton, which processes constitute an act of consciousness. DNA is based on the exoplex excimer laser system. The human biological system is made of biophotons and autologous biosolitons, which together with laser light are responsible for human mental states. Our life is largely unconscious, and we execute preprogrammed roles. Normally, we are not aware of such a mechanism. We often wonder why we behaved in such a way and not otherwise, why a particular situation happens to us and no other situations. We assume that that is just the way it is, the way the world is. Nevertheless, behind such an event there is a hidden set, located in the subconscious programs, based on directives given from space. Braided quantum states in the brain constitute an act of the mind. The unity of mind is achieved by synchronizing solitons and bioplasma. Synchronization of solitons with macroscopic quantum coherence determines the act of consciousness.
Melanin is the chemical key to life. There is nothing else to study in science but melanin. We call it chemi, which means black. The people who study melanin particles call what they're studying, the science is called chemistry. What you call chemistry, the study of melanin particles that go around in an orbit, and we call them electrons, protons, solitons. Those are melanin particles. That's why we call it chemistry.
Understand, functionally how this pathway works. And bringing this back full circle to what you asked me, this is really important for like the phaptic transmission, because what is melanin effectively doing? Not only creating the electrons in the system, but melanin absorbs all amounts of electromagnetic radiation, including ROS, RNS, and turns it in to metabolic energy that can be used for physiologic work. So it puts it into water. And what did we just say about Montagnier's study? That Montagnier's study, beyond a shadow of a doubt, shows that water has some amazing capabilities. And we know that every single wideband semiconductor inside of humans only operates when it's hydrated. This story that I just gave you literally in 5 minutes about Sabatini's work isn't that hard to get. And all you have to do is ask the question, why is it that we don't know after 25 years or 28 years of work since this paper got published, why we don't have any clue why oxygen, phosphorus, and glucose seem to really alter this pathways in a way we don't understand? Because we don't realize there's nonlinear optics going on inside the cell. What's going on with the biochemistry boxcars isn't really important. mTOR by itself isn't really important. All it is a major equalizer shift inside a cell that allows the cell to understand what's going on outside, what's in the environment in terms of nutrients. It nutrient senses, and then it senses via quorum sensing via light to the rest of the body. It talks to the leptin receptor in the brain to let them know what the energy balance is. Again, aren't we back to that leptin melanocortin pathway? Shocker. The pieces are all there, but I think the missing part for, Peter Attia's work, Huberman's work, Sabatini's work is what I just explained to Rick and Huberman. I think it's the biggest piece because it's the architecture of how we work. And until you understand that everything about biochemistry is at the biophysical level. In other words, I want to drag guys like Attia, because I think he's a good doctor. I want to drag him to this quantum level. Even though he's going to be kicking and screaming, it's the same thing that I get from several of my members and several of my ex-members and people who don't know my work. They're like, can you make this easier? Can you give me a cruise for dummies? And I'm like, no, I can't, because that's not how nature operates, okay? Nature kills dummies. That's what extinction events are about. Anybody who can't adapt, they die, okay? Now, that's a hardcore way of putting it, but it's the truth. And when you're trying to uncover basic truth in science, when you're truly trying to change a paradigm, you have to punch people in the mouth to let them know that they're missing something really big. And when they understand what it is that they're missing, they fall back on their chair. Like when you teach them what I just said to you, everybody knows that mTOR is a big deal, but nobody knows why it's a big deal. And to me, the why is what they should spend most of their time doing, because it's clear in 28 years, they haven't found it in the biochemistry lab. Sorry for the rant, but I think it illustrates the point.
I think it's really important because a lot of people, even physicists, deny that biology can have a quantum effect because it's too wet. And I think fundamentally this idea of water and the semiconduction is vital for taking people to the next level, because biology...
I don't think you can be a physicist today, though, and have that position. The reason why? The 2007 papers on photosynthesis blow that out the water. The problem for physicists right now is now they know it happens in a warm, wet environment. And guess what? I would get on their case just the way I would get on Peter Attia's case. In other words, you have to do a better job. And to understand truly what biology is doing, I personally don't think is that hard to get based on what we know in physics. How does a warm, wet environment do it? Well, on the outside of the system that we have a vitamin D system that works with deuterium that's protecting the inside of the cells so that you can have magnetic moments that have nuclear spins of half. And it turns out electrons and protons have that. Deuterium has magnetic moment of +1. Well, light has an unlimited magnetic moment. I didn't even get into this with the guys in the Huberman podcast, but one of the things that we know about coherent light, that means laser light, is it appears to have an unlimited to infinity orbital angular momentum. What does that mean? That means that light can do things that we just can't fathom. And I explained to Huberman and Rick that the analogy that I used is we're all sitting, all three of us would be sitting in a movie theater, and we'd see from the projector the light coming out. And we would look at that light and know the movie that's on the screen is inside that light. But when we look at that light or the projector, we have no earthly idea what reality is. But yet, when that light hits the screen, which is melanin, reality manifests. That is the idea that people have to get. So to give you the final thought here, Sarah, because you heard my analogies to Rick and Huberman about when the Human Genome Project came out, we found out we had the same number of genes as gorillas. That should have been a hard stop. Let me tell you what the hard stop should be for physicists. The hard stop should be the 2007 papers on photosynthesis. The other hard stop should be the Klitschko papers about magnetoreception in European robins. The other hard stop should be some of the stuff that Jim L. Khalili's already found out about proton tunneling in DNA, okay? Like, it's futile to argue the point anymore. Now it's time to look into exactly what life is doing below the cell level. That's really the case. And to bring it back to the people who are probably at the reality level and the biochemical level, like the Peter Attias of the world, here's what I would like to say to them, because this is going to be a very big, encompassing statement. This is designed to punch your audience and the people that probably you talk to square in the mouth. Don't you find this paradox interesting? Here's another paradox I'm going to give you, that mTOR seems to work all the way up from worms, all the way up to mammals, but it stops at humans. Like, we have good data for mTOR that calorie restriction really works. But guess what? We have no good data that it works in humans. Ask yourself why that's the case, because last time I checked, Sarah, aren't humans mammals? What makes humans a little bit different? They've amplified two key semiconductors in their body plan, DHA and melanin. Hard stop. The ideas around diet and how they affect this pathway make no earthly sense at all. In fact, all they're going to do is confuse the simple mind. And I consider most of the people with simple minds, the people at the reality level, the thermodynamic level, at the quantum level, where most of the people you probably interact with, which are physicists, they're going to understand, I think, what I just told you a little bit better, because melanin functionally is condensed matter physics. It's where AMO physics acts. It's the essence of what Schrodinger put in his book when he said, "What is life about?" The most stunning revelation that I think I gave to Huberman, I don't think it hit on him, was that melanin is now being looked at by the AI community as the most amazing semiconductor out there. It does more amazing things than even graphene does. And when you look at it, see what it's made of. It's a carbon-based semiconductor that's doped with certain atoms that are all wide band gapped dopants. And it's hydrated. That's got to make you stop. And then when you realize that the light that's emitted from melanin is stronger than the light in the sun, that actually answers the question that Erwin Schrodinger brought up. He said, for some reason, life seems to skirt the second law of thermodynamics. And he coined the term in the book, negative entropy. What is negative? Negative entropy has been a bane of existence to scientists, both physics and biology. Why? Because it's so hard to wrap your head around what's really happening. And when you begin to understand that all life on this planet lived under a sun, and biology on this planet figured out how to make stronger light than the sun's there, all of a sudden you can see the mathematics change. That's how you create negative entropy. You create light stronger inside you that you can use physiologically. But it turns out the answer to your question, the one that I want you to go back to the scientists with, they need to understand that melanin in our skin with the visible spectrum of light is how you create the warm, wet environment to allow for quantum coherence to happen. That is the first step. So I give them that step to work on. Now it's time for you to get in the lab and start thinking about this a little bit differently, because what I'm fundamentally saying is that nature's been at this game for 4.7 billion years. She's way ahead of where we are in Taiwan semiconducting or in Silicon Valley. We're still at the silicon level where water destroys semiconduction. I would vehemently push against any physicist that told me that they don't accept that. I would actually go to this extraordinary step, what I'm about to say. That's a person I wouldn't listen to anything about, because their mind is closed. They're in their own silo and they don't get it. It's obvious that semiconduction is happening in us. It's obvious that quantum mechanics is happening below the cell level and giving us some of the very unique things that we see in biology. It's time to get our own frontal lobes out of our own way to see what's right in front of us. Way far down the rabbit hole than they are. They just need to come down the rabbit hole and see what I'm seeing. Because when you see it, it's really hard not to see it. Like, it's hard to remain ignorant of what's staring you right in front of the face.
But you're a bit like Gilbert Ling. You're so intelligent. You can't. It's really hard for you to. If you had a projector, you could just beam into people's brains. It would be easier. But you're like the Gilbert Ling of light. That it's so beyond people at the moment. But then it's just about continuing to, as you say, punch them in the face with science?
It goes back to Faraday's experiments in the 1850s. Basically, the FO head spins, you got electric current coming through, that induces electric and magnetic fields. So because the intermitochondrial membrane is only 6 microns, that means the charge differential between them is 30 million volts. So realize that you have a lightning bolt present in every single crista of your mitochondrial membrane. So that tells you about power, okay? The other crazy thing about the electromagnetic force is that it gets stronger as scale shrinks. So for example, the electromagnetic force in the sun is not as great as it is in your mitochondria. Let me say that again, because people will not believe what I just said, but it's absolutely the truth. As scale shrinks, the electromagnetic force, the force carrier of that force is the photon, becomes stronger. So when you think about what I've said about melanin, what I've said about wideband semiconduction, that we're able to make light stronger than the sun, and it's inside us. And I just told you about scale, you start going, wait a minute, now I know where Jack's going with longevity. It turns out who's ever got the best mitochondrial redox wins the game of longevity. That's exactly what I've been saying for 20 years. Sources of power that are available to cells that we don't know. Like the amount of energy that I'm trying to tell you that we store at the electronic and vibrational levels will absolutely stun physicists, you know, when we find this out. I think that we have more power in us as alive sentient beings than people could ever harness. Somebody asked me at a dinner party once that I think we had over 1 trillion millivolts in us. I said, how many trillions? We may be in the quadrillions. We may even be bigger than that. And the reason I say that is because when you understand the human brain as I do, it's the first true quantum computer. I shouldn't say true. It's just the best iteration. The first one was probably the cephalopod brain that innovated right at the Cambrian explosion, but we're the latest version of it. And we have the most updated one. To run quantum computing, to work on electrons, protons, and photons, you have to have tremendous energy and power. So it becomes incumbent upon the physicist and the biologist to explain where that energy and power come from. What led me down this path was Noether's theorem and also E equals MC squared. I realized when I saw the nuclear bomb explosion how much energy could be unleashed between two elements in atoms. And that's when you think about the things that I'm talking about with wide bandgap semiconduction. It's not hard to imagine that you can pull this type of energy out of magnesium, calcium, sodium, phosphorus, nitrogen. And when you look at chlorophyll and see it in a nitride cage, you know, with 12 electrons, and look what it does. It creates all the food on the planet and all these beautiful trees that are, you know, around me. And then you think hemoglobin has been the wideband semiconductor that basically innovated most complex life. It actually worked hand in hand with mitochondria to actually get to this melanin story. Don't think that melanin is a late biologic creation. I told Ubram this, and he didn't know it, that cephalopods used ink that's made out of 70% melanin to get away, or when they got bit. I said, we now put that melanin in our own white blood cells so that when we get injured, that's what determines how we heal. That story now is linked to autophagy, apoptosis. It's linked to mTOR.